Today I'm going to try to show you how to do some very basic beginning tatting, needle tatting. I don't use a shuttle because I make too many mistakes and it's harder to correct them when you're using a shuttle. And apparently I'm all fingers, so the needle just works easier for me anyway. So the first thing that you need is a needle. They actually come in 4 different sizes that I have found. I have managed to create things with other sizes too, but this one is the largest one that comes in the 4-piece set. This one is the one I typically use. It's the same size as a doll needle, except that they have the blunted tip and the doll needle is sharper. This one is for the smaller threads, and then there's one tinier one, which I'm not finding at the moment, that is closer to the size of a regular needle but long, and you use that when you're doing actual thread size. And the size thread makes a difference because that will determine the size of your knot. Because you're making the knots over the needle, the size of the needle and the size of the thread will create the size of your knot. In addition to that, you will need scissors for cutting off your thread when you're done. And you need your thread, which for purposes of showing on the demonstration is easiest to use a size 10 regular crochet thread. So we're going to thread our needle and pull out, on a small flower I usually pull out 8 to 10 inches of thread through the needle, and then I start probably a foot down away from the needle to begin. You're going to put your needle on your finger on top of the thread with the thread coming from your needle dangling below you and the thread from your ball going off to the left, because I'm right-handed. You could always switch that around if you're left-handed. We're going to create a flower like this. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our thread and we're going to take our finger and push towards us like this, and then we're going to put our needle from the front to the back, and then we will do it in reverse. We'll push our finger away and go from the back to the front. So we're going front to back, back to front. It's easier for some reason for me to do this faster. I usually keep the needle still and I make my finger just twist back and forth. So I'm going counterclockwise with my finger and then clockwise with my finger. I've actually done too many stitches here, and here's the advantage of using a needle. I can take off the ones I don't want. So I want 5 stitches here, so I'm going to slide it up and take off and undo those 5 stitches. Now, I'm going to put my finger here at the end. We're going to create a gap called a picot and start another knot. When you slide it, you see you get this little ring that sticks out. That's your picot. Then I will do 4 more stitches. Sometimes your thread sticks to itself. That's easy enough to fix. Okay, so here I'm creating this first inside ring right here with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push it together and I'm going to slide it off my needle so that my pinky is inside, ready to catch it when it comes, when it gets tighter. And then I will take my needle and go up through the bottom, and then I can pull tight to close it and create the ring. Then I will wrap it around my finger and put my needle through to create a knot at the end to hold it in place. So now I have created one ring with a little bit extra large picot here at the bottom for us to catch the other rings in here to create the flower center. Now we're going to do an arch. We're going to give ourselves a little bit more thread here. Move some of this out of the way. And I will do 5 more stitches. And then I will put my finger here. I won't put as much of my finger on. When I did it in the middle, I put it so that there was a good 1/2 inch or something on the needle. I'm only going to use about half of that for a smaller picot for the outside. So we don't necessarily want it to stick out that much. Then I will do 5 knots like this. And then I'm not going to put my finger inside to catch this time. I'm going to pull all the way through, and then it bends and creates an arch like this. Then we'll turn and put the needle through and tie our knot to close it off. So now we have one ring and one arch. Rings and arches are the basis for tatting. Most of what we do is created in those two shapes, which is why it creates very pretty lace, because it's very round and scallopy. If you want it to be really lacy, you can do it in the smaller thread sizes, and then it will end up like this. Here I used a size 30 thread to create a lace to go around my bow. Okay, now I'm going to do 5 more. Feel free to pause, rewind if you need to. When I first started, this is what took me 3 tries before I could get this right, because I kept forgetting that at this point I have to stop and pretend that we're doing crochet. We're going to use the tip like we would a crochet hook and reach through and catch the thread and pull it through. Slide our needle back up and then do 5 more knots. This is what we call a join, because we're joining this ring to the second ring, which I will now put my finger in here and pull this tight. Losing it. And put my needle through and pull it tight. So now I have 2 rings and an arch. Turn, tie the knot to close it off. This is adjustable. This little piece here in the middle, your second one can slide along it, up and down, whatever way you need it to. We're going to want it closer to the edge because we're going to put more around, but you can adjust that later for equally distancing each ring. We're going to create the next arch with 5 more knots, a picot, and 5 more knots. Then I will slide my needle through to create the arch. Turn and put the needle through so we can tie it off. Now I'm getting to where my thread is a little close to what I'm working on, so I'm going to pull it out a little bit so that I don't catch it, and I'm going to give myself some more thread on the other end. Next ring, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 knots, and we're going to catch again here in the middle. See how it pulls it through and creates another almost half a stitch there. When you pull the thread from the needle through, then that will keep it, and that's what creates the join. I'll slide it up and do 5 more knots. Then we'll put our finger in, our pinky finger in, and we will pull through, but catch that ring so that we can close it instead of leaving an arch. Then we will turn and tie it off. Now it wants to curve up a little bit. This is where sliding it along that inner ring is going to make a difference. Okay, we will do another arch. I could leave you to fast forward and skip all this if you wanted to. Sometimes it's easier just to see it repeated the first time you try something. So I'm going to show you every one of them in this tutorial. So now I've got 5, a picot, and 5 more. This is the simplest pattern I could think of because it's all done in 5s. 5 knots, 5 rings, 5 arches, and that creates a 5-petal flower. I'm going to make the next ring, 4, 5, and then I'll take the needle and catch the thread from behind. Here it's easier for me if I fold it over while I'm doing the second 5 knots because the petals start to get in the way. After doing the 5 knots, you can unfold it again, put your finger through to catch and close your ring. Make sure that you're pulling snug, not super tight, but try and keep your tension even. And then we'll close it, separate a little bit so we can catch that last ring in here. We'll do, caught myself. Okay. You want it to be close to the edge, but sometimes you have to turn the needle a little sideways to make it work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Finger for the picot. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm going to pull through. Make sure that you're not catching it around because it will scrunch up in a big knot. Close that off, flatten it out a little bit. One more ring, give me some more thread. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, can you see all those knots there? So I've got 5 half-hitch knots on there. Now I scoot up and catch all the way. Here we go. I'm going to fold this over again for doing the other 5, so it's out of the way. Okay. And then I will put my finger in and pull it through. Oh, we've cut this again. Tie it off. Okay, we've got all 5 rings. We get to do one more arch for the outside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Picot. 2, 3, 4, 5. I will pull it through. This time, instead of immediately turning and tying the knot like I would, I'm going to bring my needle down here to this top of this ring and put it just under this thread and then pull it through so that it connects on this side. Then I will tie my knot to close it, and then I can play a little. I usually prefer to tie it twice when I'm done with the project so that I don't worry about it coming undone, and then I can sit there and play with you know, how far each one is sticking out and making them even, making sure it's flat. As you can see, I have a flower. If I get my threads out of the way. You can leave the strings on there and create it into a pendant. You can connect the top to earrings and make it as an earring, or you can use it as an applique. Lace is fun because you can put it on all kinds of things. Sometimes I'll put a button in the middle and use it as an accent piece. Now, when I want to finish, I don't want these threads hanging out. So I'm gonna snip my thread off here, and I'm going to tuck my ends. In crochet, you would weave it through with a needle. In tatting, you're gonna take your needle and go inside the knots, which can be a little difficult on the first knot because it's often pulled just a little tight. So I use my thumbnail to wiggle it around until I can feel that my needle is gonna go through, and then I can push it through the second knot a lot easier. Sometimes I can line them up nice and straight, and I can get several knots in a row. And I will go up to the picot and pull it through carefully so I'm not creating more knots, like that. And then because I like my arches to be the same, not have one side thicker, I will go back down through the other side of my arch. Pull it through, and then I can cut off that thread, and it's not there anymore. Now I can tuck the other side, just take this one off and rethread with this one. Now we're going to go in the other side. All right, so I'm gonna go underneath and inside. See if you can see this. Underneath and inside the knot. This is actually one of the most difficult things to do and takes the longest of all the tatting, is just to tuck the ends to make it pretty. You can snip them, but I'm always afraid that my knot would come undone and it would all fall apart. So I always tuck my ends. Okay, going through the other side, pull it through and snip it, pull it even, and I have one 5-petal heart.